Yo, welcome to the Cosmic Paradox channel. Like, subscribe, and share. Now, if we get more or we dig deeper into the symbolism, gold, gold represents the purified essence of spirit or divine enlightenment, right? And that's associated with the sun. Okay, that's connected to the sun, which is seen as the highest vibrational energy in terms of the sun. And that's the connection to the pineal gland. The pineal gland is often called or known as the third eye, right? And it's linked to spiritual insight, intuition, and enlightenment. So, esoterically, it is the seat of the soul or the seat of Christ consciousness, where the individual unites with divine awareness, right? The whole story of Christ and the crucifixion having to do with the rising of the energy up to the crown chakra, Jesus residing at the hand of my Father, symbolizing the unification with the divine awareness. So in physical terms, your pineal gland regulates your circadian rhythm, right? Your sleep wake cycle. So it produces melatonin, which governs sleep and wake cycle. So that's having to do with light and dark. You being awake, you being asleep in its most basic gross terms. So your pineal gland does that, mirroring in both physical and a spiritual sense. So what as above, so below. So that occurring within your physical body is what also occurs within the spiritual. So it's your pineal gland that is in connection with your awakening. So the third eye awakening is symbolic to you spiritually awakening, becoming aware, seeing the light and the dark. Okay? So the pituitary gland is just connected to the frankincense. This is why I use these particular oils when I make candles, because they correlate on a frequency in the spirit. Because as above, so below, as within, so without. So it's mirroring from physical to spiritual, and everything can't always be dealt with from a physical aspect. Most of the time the physical is what is happens after, which is why we get diseases that manifest in the physical that correlates to an ongoing energetic imbalance, because it mirrors, right? It mirrors. So in the pituitary gland, that symbolism of that frankincense being sacred or seen as a sacred resin used in rituals to connect with the divine, it symbolizes that spiritual connection or having spiritual aspirations. It symbolizes prayer, which is communicating with source, which is talking to source. So it's talking about an elevation of consciousness, right? So it's an elevation of consciousness. So the pituitary gland is known as the master gland. The pituitary gland controls the entire endocrine system. Now, your endocrine system is what regulates hormones that influence growth, metabolism, and other vital functions. So everything that happens in your body correlates to a gland, which is why every chakra body is connected to a gland. It's connected to a gland and a nerve plexus system. So your nervous system is very intricate in terms of your spiritual energetic body. Okay? So the pituitary gland being that master gland, right? Esoterically, the pituitary gland represents the divine feminine energy, balancing spiritual and physical planes. So it's linked to the brow chakra, right? Or the third eye, right? And it works in harmony with the pineal gland to awaken to higher states of awareness. So it's more so with the brow chakra center, which is, most people say the brow chakra or correlated to the third eye. But remember, your third eye is pineal gland, right? So lastly, the thalamus or hypothalamus, right? So myrrh, when you're looking at the symbolism of myrrh, myrrh represents the material body and mortality. So it's also spiritual essence that transcends death. So it's often associated with healing, grounding, and the cycle of life and death. So grounding, going back to what the root has to do with you being grounded. This is why it all circles from top to bottom. And you can't avoid any other chakras. You can't feel a way about the lower chakras. Or like it all correlates. You need them all to work together. That is the integration. That is the necessary need to bring the opposites together. That's what makes a wholeness, right? That's what makes the wholeness. So the thalamus acts as a relay center for sensory and motor signals to the cerebral cortex, symbolizing the connection between the physical and the spiritual realms. So your brain, your senses tell your brain what is what, allowing you to see what you see in this physical. So this is representing your lower form. So this is bringing all this together. This is the three wise men in terms of looking at those three glands, right? So myrrh, association with mortality, ties to the brain's role in balancing life-sustaining functions with our quest for transcendence. So it all works together. The three wise men are a trinity. Just like Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is a trinity. That's why you see trinities in different cultures of civilizations having a strong significance. So these three glands form the sacred trinity of the brain, responsible for bridging the gap between the physical and spiritual realms. So the pineal focuses on spiritual illumination and the eternal. The pituitary mediates divine connection and balance. And the thalamus and hypothalamus ensures the body and mind are grounded and integrated. So the Trinity is necessary. It is crucial for the awakening of the Christ consciousness, which is why they had to come to Christ and present those things symbolically in the story. Okay? It's mirroring the gifts brought to the Christ child and representing the alchemical union of body, mind, and spirit. So esoterically, in terms of the brain, when the energy of the kundalini rises through the spine and reaches the brain, it activates these three glands, leading to spiritual vision. Right? That's the activation of the pineal gland, opening the third eye, allowing access to higher dimensions and deeper intuition, allowing you to see beyond the veil, allowing you to see energy. That's why you understand what people be feeling and they don't be knowing. That's why you can see things that other people cannot see. It brings about the divine harmony because the pituitary gland harmonizes the spiritual and physical, helping maintain balance during the awakening process. This is important because if you don't maintain that balance, you got spiritual psychosis. That's where that spiritual psychosis come from. That lack of balance. That's why you work on every one of them chakras. You can't avoid none. Right? And the thalamus keeps the individual grounded while supporting the integration of higher awareness into daily life. So you gotta still be rooted and grounded, so you don't drift away off somewhere in the clouds, which is in a place of delusion. You gotta be rooted still. It is important. It is necessary. Now it's also important that I note that the three wise men also parallel the stars on the horizon belt. right? So they parallel the three stars of Orion's belt, which align with the star of Bethlehem. So this alignment, which is often visible during the winter solstice, symbolizes the cosmic order guiding the seeker to spiritual illumination, which is here. It's just like this right here. We're talking about Orion's belt aligning with the star of Bethlehem. So this is what's going on within the sky. This is how it correlates in terms of that. Now, in the story with the shepherds represent awareness of the soul's inner call. There were shepherds in the fields who first received the message of Christ's birth. This is symbolism of, this is saying that it represents the watchful soul, being attentive to stirrings of spiritual awakening. Their role is to nurture and protect the flock of thoughts and actions, ensuring they align with divine purpose. So that's you practicing mindfulness. That's you having the ability to quiet your mind and listen to the small voice of the inner divine, knowing how to hear that divine connection, because everything else is going to be so loud. So you must be able to be guided. Right? Even down to Christ being born at night. You think being born at night at this time during the winter solstice, that's the darkest night of the year. But it's when light begins to return. So that is symbolic in the birth of Christ. It's symbolically showing the light returning. Right? So that's talking about, the dark night of the soul. This corresponding or highlighting the descent into one's shadow self, followed by the rise of spiritual illumination and Christ consciousness within. If you want to understand the dark night of the soul, watch The Dark Knight. Watch The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight Rises is all about the dark night of the soul. It's literally called The Dark Knight. So, them having you talking about Mary and Joseph fleeing to Egypt to protect the infant Jesus from King Herod. This is symbolizing or representing the need to protect the spark of spiritual enlightenment from the forces of the lower self that is going to seek to suppress it. Now, they can manifest outside yourself in people not wanting you to be true to who you are. People encouraging you to still mask who you are. But it's only a reflection from the process of the awakening that happens within. Because naturally your lower self is going, or your ego self is going to want to suppress it. So King Herod symbolizes the ego-driven desire to maintain control and resist transformation. Because the ego fears the unknown. So this is paralleling in the physical the need for consistent spiritual practices. This is why you gotta meditate. This is why sometimes you gotta fast. This is why sometimes you gotta journal. This is why sometimes you have to continue to stay on a path of mindfulness, because you have to nurture and protect the growing Christ consciousness within you. It is something that must be protected, even from yourself. So remember, because the Christ energy, the story of Christ is the sun. So Christ's life is marked by trials, death, and resurrection. Purposely, this story is told this way. because it represents the sun. Christ parallels the sun, which dies at the winter solstice and begins its ascent, bringing life and light to the earth. So the sun's journey mirrors the spiritual seeker's path of self-discovery, death of the ego, and the ultimate enlightenment. And this is represented in your body by your spine. This corresponds to the spinal column, where the energy of the kundalini or divine force rises. It's illuminating the seeker's consciousness, just as the sun illuminates the earth. The spinal column and the brain is what makes up your nervous system. All your nerves intricately within your spine and your brain. You know? So the birth of Christ is ultimately a metaphor for the awakening of Christ's consciousness within every individual. It's the realization that you are divine, eternal, and capable of transcending darkness. And that's different for everybody. Everybody has a story to tell. All right? So the story is an allegory for the spiritual journey, ascending from lower states of existence to higher states of divine unity. So when we connect this story to the body, it emphasizes the sacred nature of the human form as the temple of the divine. You are the temple. You house the source. This is where spiritual transformation unfolds. So when you're talking to a esoteric practitioner, Jesus Christ represents the universal archetype of divine consciousness, not a historical figure. Not a historical figure. His birth signifies the potential for every individual to awaken to their own divine nature and embody love, compassion, and wisdom. The nativity story is an allegory for the birth of the Christ within, a time to reflect on personal growth, spiritual alignment, and the journey towards wholeness.